All right, so medical microbiology, it deals with gram-positives, gram-positive organisms, whereas the identification of unknowns was looking at gram-negatives. The principle is the same, however, you're going to be following a flow chart, and as long as you follow the flow chart, you should have no problem identifying the organism. Let's see. Make sure that you identify the specimens. Oftentimes the specimen is pretty obvious, just if this is a UTI, then obviously the specimen collected will be urine. So make sure you identify the specimen, whatever that is. And the UTI is just a little bit different because of the way that it is determined that it's an infection by counting the number of organisms. But other than that, once you determine whether there's an infection or not and you identify the organism, the identification is the same for every case study, for every one of the samples. So we're going to end up with a flow chart, and there is a test that is done first. And if you notice, so you have the gram-positive flow charts. It says gram-positives, and then there's a test. I'm not going to tell you. It's just on the chart, so you'll see what it is. And if it is positive, you'll go into this direction. If it is negative, you go into this direction. Notice that the organisms for the positives and the organisms for the negatives are of different genera. So all of the positives belong to one genus, all of the negatives belong to another genera. So obviously, this first test that is done is going to separate the organism into being either of one genus or another genus. And that's why the question asks you under which genus does the result of the test put your organism. So it is obviously an important test because it allows you to come up with the genus. And then you go into the second test, third test. This first test is one of the biochemical tests that we discussed in last time that we met. I have actually a copy of the chart here so that I can refer to. One thing you need to notice, another test is the mannitol salt agar plate, which again, that's another one of those tests that we talked about when we talked about biochemical tests. One of the things to notice is that some of the tests are not biochemical tests, but are antibiotic sensitivity tests. So when it asks for a result, we're not expecting a positive or a negative result. We're expecting a resistant or sensitive result. So be aware of that. So there are several of those, like novobiacin, vacitracin, optokin. All these are antibiotics. Also, for some of these organisms, they're going to want you to do let me think, maybe I'm making that up. Yeah, I was going to say a hemolysis test. No, there is no hemolysis test here. No, actually, this is incredibly simple. Okay, there is one test I do want to talk about, which was not, I don't think it was on the list. Maybe I'm pretty sure it's not on the list of biochemical tests. This is the coagulase test. A coagulase test is one in which you test for the ability of the organism to clot blood, to clot plasma. So essentially, that's exactly what you would do. For that test is you would get a test tube with rabbit plasma and the test tube is inoculated with the organism, and this happens quite fast. Within a matter of 8 hours or so, the plasma will be clotted, in which case the organism is coagulase positive, or it will not be clotted, in which case it's coagulase negative. And this is a very definitive test because there's only one bacteria that has the coagulase enzyme. So be aware of that. Other than that, it's just a matter of following the test, naming the test, and determining what the result is. Again, The result may not necessarily be negative or positive. It may be sensitive or resistant until you get to the last organism that you're going to identify. So again, it is very, very straightforward. I really do expect everybody to do well here. Pay attention as to the specimen collected, and if a test you're not sure how to read it, just go through the explanation that the virtual lab gives you on how to read the test. Okay. Any questions about these? I want to make sure, I want to go ahead and open, if there are no questions, I want to go ahead and open the lab report 11, which you don't have to do, obviously, but in case you do want to do it, I want to make sure that I talk about it briefly. Lab report 11 is not going to be part of the it's not going to be part of the lab report of the lab practical. However, it is chapter 19, so we are going to be dealing with that the principles of this lab report. Give me a second. Okay. All right. Give me just a second, because I don't have it here for some reason. Yeah, we can go with the 10-point clinical case extra credit also. Yeah, and again, that's not very involved either. Okay, let me do these. Let me go on a different route real quick so that we can find it. Perfect. Okay. Give me just a second. Okay. Perfect. All right. Now, the mock outbreak deals with that, deals with a make-believe epidemic of hepatitis B among a group of students who have been in close contact with each other and have exchanged bodily fluids. Hepatitis B is a communicable disease, is not a contagious disease in that it is not easily spread. You need close contact, sharing of needles, blood contact, sex, exchanging body fluids to be exposed to hepatitis B. Okay, and that is the reason why an epidemic is unlikely, is because it's not easily transmitted. So communicable diseases don't necessarily will give you epidemics. Communicable contagious diseases, the ones that are easily spread, are the ones that will give you an epidemic. All right, so what these are right here are the rotations, and you have to take them in a consecutive order, in that student 3 and student 11 were in contact with each other before student 15 and 4 were in contact with each other. So this is a progression, a sequential order of contact. So 3 and 11 were in contact first, then 3 was in contact with 7, then 3 was in contact with 8. So that's why it says first contact, second contact, third contact, etc. Okay. You need to determine which student was the one who started the epidemic. You are given a list of students who ended up being infected and the ones that were not infected. And essentially what you're going to be asked to do is to create a flow chart of how the infection happened. Okay. I just want a whiteboard. So if you decide that student 5 is the one who started the epidemic, then you should be able to show that student 5 started the epidemic and it gave it to, let's say, 10, and then 10 gave it to 13, 5 gave it to 2, 10 gave it to, I don't know, 7, 7 gave it to 12, 2 gave it to, I don't know, 3. And in that flow chart, you should account for every one of the infections. And it should explain how each one of the infected students got the organism were infected. It should not have any of the non-infected students. So if you say, for example, okay, one of the first rotations was 5 coming in contact with 7, I should probably say 10, not 7. Yeah. Okay, let's say 5. Well, yeah, you can say 5 coming in contact with 7, and then 7 coming in contact with 1. Then just by these two, and then continues on with other rotations, just by these right here, you should realize that 5 could not have been the one who started the epidemic, because sorry, no, let me go back. That 7 could not have been the one that started the epidemic, because 7 was in contact with 1, and 1 never got the epidemic. And as a matter of fact, 7 was in contact with 1, 1 never got the epidemic. 7 could not have gotten the epidemic from 5, because otherwise it would have happened to give it to 1. So that means that 5 is not the one who started, 7 is not the one who started it. They might have later on have gotten the epidemic from somebody else, but initially they were not the ones who started it. Okay, so this flowchart is defective, it's not true, by going just by the contacts. Okay, but maybe you can say that then, let me think, 4 contacts 5. Okay, now 4 contacts 5, and we can say, okay, well, maybe 4 is the one who got it, and 4 gave it to 5, and then maybe I don't know, we can say 5 and 10 were together, and okay, then that's how 5 gave it to 10, and you can proceed in that manner. So what I'm trying to say here is, whatever you flow chart you come up with, you need to test it against the the students who got the epidemic and the students who didn't get the epidemic, and the order of the contacts. Okay, so and so you can check and make sure that you get the right result. All right, so let me go ahead and make sure that I talk about anything else that's important. So you should be able to come up with the source of the outbreak. The index case is the first student who shows signs and symptoms, and that is explained in the setup of the epidemic. We'll create the flow chart, make sure I didn't leave anything out here. The etiology is, we'll talk about in chapter 19, is the cause of the outbreak, the organism that causes the outbreak, or the infectious agent causing the outbreak. You should come up with a reservoir for the infectious agent. We'll talk about reservoirs in chapter 19. Incubation period according to the write-up that we have. Distinguish between outbreak and epidemic. All this is chapter 19. Some of the signs of hepatitis B, some of the symptoms of hepatitis B. Calculate the attack rate. Well, we know the number of students that were exposed, and so you need to know the number of, out of the numbers that were exposed, let's say 20 were exposed, and out of the 20, 10 got the epidemic, then you have a 50% attack rate. Okay, so 10 out of 20 times 100. So that's this particular exercise. Again, it's not terribly hard. questions about these? Okay, so let me go ahead and open the other one, the clinical case, which is uploading right now. Yes, Lab 11 is over Chapter 19. Exactly. Yep, that is correct. So there is no virtual lab attached to it. The clinical case essentially presents a scenario in which certain people, a group of people, end up with a food intoxication after eating at a restaurant, and you had to identify the source of the intoxication, the risk factors that. So I'm sorry, let me go back. These are all the people that were exposed. And from then you have to choose one or two. I believe the instructions say to choose two of the attendants. And of at least, yeah, okay, three. So evaluate the risk factors of three of the people sitting at the table. Three sources of infection. So where could they have gotten the foodborne infection? Five possible causes that could have been given them the infection. So this is a fish market. There's some animals roaming around. So it could be the food, it could be the animals, it could be the drinks. So identify the sources of the infections. Yeah, what would you tell the family to prevent diseases in the future, the same type of diseases? Maybe wash their hands, maybe make sure that the food is cooked properly. And would these be different in the place where you live? Maybe we don't have open air restaurants, close to the water or anything like that. Okay, or with animals roaming around, for example. Or maybe we do. I don't know. So it's fairly simple. It's kind of fun. I think again, read about each of the attendants and determine, as you're reading, note things like age, medications they may be taking, any diseases that are mentioned, even something like allergies, which may not necessarily be a disease, but it's a condition that could open us up to infections. Okay, any questions about these? Okay. All right. Let's see. I think this is all I had for today. I knew this was not going to be a very long meeting. So, yes, good question. Is this a freestyle answer? No, exact. Yes, this is a freestyle answer, absolutely. So yeah, I will read what you write as long as it makes sense, and you come up with good possibilities. Then yeah, you get the points. Absolutely. So there are many correct answers. Let's put it that way. Okay. So there's not one set correct answer. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes. You want me to talk about that, or do you have a specific question about grades? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the clinical case is worth 10 points. Sorry. Okay, this clinical case is worth 10 points towards the unknown exercises. So instead of the unknown exercises being worth 40 points altogether, if you do the clinical case, assuming you get all your points from the other unknowns, you're going to end up with 50 points instead of 40. Okay, so it's a good deal for some reasonable amount of work. As far as the grades, remember that the way we calculate grades is with points. So what I'm going to start doing, what I'm already started doing, is I went ahead and opened up a letter grade column, and I'm looking at the number of points you have right now and giving you the grade you have right now based on the number of points. That's not your final grade, obviously, because there's still a lot to do. This is just right now how many points you have. So the reason why I've done these is so that you can start to see your status in the class, to calculate how many points you have, how many more points you need to get the grade that you want. So as far as points, the maximum number of points is 1,000. So that between 1,000 points and 900 points, that will be an A. 899 to 800 will be a B. 799, 700 would be a C. 699 to 600 is a D. And then anything less than 599 is going to be an F. So if right now, for example, you have 650 points, well, that right now corresponds to a D. All right, so how close are you to whatever grade you say you want to be? Well, that means you are, what, 50 points away from a C, 700 points. You are 150 points away from a B. Okay. All right, so what else do we have out there? We have test 6, which is an optional test, and you're not going to get many points out of that one. Assuming you've already taken test 1 through 5, unless one of those tests has a really low score and you take test 6 and you make a lot better score, you may not get many points out of test 6. But let's just say in a scenario, let's say that you have test 4 in which you made a 50 in it, okay? And so you go ahead and take test 6 and you make an 80. Well, that gained you 30 points right there. So that will have 30 points that you have all of a sudden, okay? You have lab practical 2, and now let me see, I'm gonna have to look up how much that's worth. I don't remember, so let me look it up real quick. Somebody knows. 75 points. Okay, so let's say that, yeah, 75, perfect. Let's say you make I don't know, a 60. All right, so now you have 90 points. You need 150. What else do we have? I mean, you have a C at this point for sure. What else do we have out there? So take a look at what we have left. We have, we have these unknowns. Yeah, there, thank you. I'm just completely drawn a blank. Let's say you make a 30 out of the unknowns. Okay. All right, that brings you to 120. We still have one more lab report that I have not graded, which is 10. I'm working on grading it right now. So let's say you get full points there. So that's another 20 from lab report 10. So now you're at to 140, and you get 10 points from the discussion. There's your 150 points. So what you need to do is take a look at the points you have right now. Take a look at how many points are left to obtain, and then look at it realistically as to, okay, this is how many points are out there. Realistically speaking, how many of these do I think I can get? And that way you can you have a target to shoot for, if you understand what I mean, okay? So that's why I went ahead and put that grade there, is to make you pay attention to where you stand right now. Look at where you want to go. Look at how many more points are out there, and then decide whether you do need to do lab report 11 or the extra clinical case. Discussions, remember, yeah, that's something else I wanted to talk about. Discussions, you have to do 5 discussions. So 1 through 5 need to be done, okay? The 6 does not have to be done unless you don't want to do one of the 1 through 5. Okay, so the 6 is an will take the place of the lowest grade from the other ones. So you only really need to answer 5 discussion forums, not 6. It will, I think it's only 10 points or something like that. If it's count as extra, it will not be the 10 points, it will be 5 points that could count as extra. So yeah, we can make it count as, I know some of you have already done it. We can make it count as extra, but not as 10 points, but 5 points. And yeah, I would have no problem with that. So I'll send out an email and let people know. Yeah, right. I mean, you've already done it. 5 more points is not going to hurt anybody. So yes, absolutely, in the country. Okay. Yeah, so 6 will be 5 extra points if provided you do 1 through 5 and you get full points on 1 through 5. Otherwise, it will take the place of whatever is not accomplished. They're not weighted points. No, what is weighted is the percent grade you get right now. So if you have a D right now, but if you look at the weighted total and the weighted total says you have a 78, well, you have a 78 because it's only counting what you have done. It's not counting everything else that needs to be done still. So no, it is not weighted points. Correct. Yeah. Yes. That in that regard, it's more clear cut. Absolutely. Okay. Any other questions? Correct. You don't have to take test 6 if you don't want to. That's correct. You can take a 0 on that test, and it doesn't matter as long as you're happy with your grades from tests 1 through 5. That is correct. Yeah. And if all you wanted out of the class was a C, and right now you already have 700 points, you don't even have to take the lab practical 2 if you don't want to. If right now you have the points that you want for the grade that you need, and you don't want to take the lab practical 2, and you don't want to do any of the unknowns, that's it. I mean, that's what you have right now. That's what you're going to get. So I mean, that's not the case for very many of you, or hardly any of you, but just keep that in mind. Yeah, it's December 6th. So I'll go ahead and reload the correct study guides right now, and then as soon as I'm finished grading lab report 10, which hopefully I'll do that by tomorrow, I'll have it ready. I'll upload the answers for lab report 10. Yeah, I think I have to do 7, 8, 9, and 10. I've already graded 9, so I can go ahead and upload 9 tonight. So we'll have 7, 8, 9, and then I'll upload 10. So yeah, we should have pretty much all the study guides uploaded within the next couple of days. Any other questions? We'll meet on Thursday to wrap up chapter 16 and chapter 19. And then we'll have the last of the lectures probably on Monday to go over the pathogens, gram-positive and gram-negative pathogens, for those who want to take test 6. Okay. Very good. So see you on Thursday. Guys, have a good evening, and